Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another True You podcast with me, Paula Burns, Creative Confidence and Visibility Mentor. So, this is a place where we have open discussions to understand who we are in order that we can live our lives to the fullest. And every week, I bring on a special guest who shares their version of living their true lives. So important for us to realize that we all have different experiences, and that's why I like to have a range of guests that come onto the podcast to share what their journey was like to get to where they are. If you are struggling with finding the true you, this is the podcast to be listening to, and this is the place to be inspired. So I'm going to get straight into it and introduce my guest, my amazing guest today. Welcome, Sue Richards.
Hi, thanks for having me, Paula. I'm so delighted to be here.
And I am delighted to have you as a guest. And I can't wait to have our conversation and to have everyone hear a little bit more about you and your journey. So let's just kick things off and tell everybody what is it that you do?
So I'm a business mentor. I work with self-employed women, mainly mums, and I help them to cut through the overwhelm, the overthinking, the indecision, and actually start making tracks towards the vision that they have for their business and for their lives, because I'm a really strong believer that our lives and our business are not separate
You know,
when we're self-employed. And so my big goal with all of the work I do is to not just look at people's businesses, but to also look at what's going on in their lives as well, because they very definitely impact on each other. And so I want to understand what's their vision for life as well as their vision for their business so that I can help them achieve both through building good, simple systems and strategies within their business.
mm, that is so important, isn't it, in terms of the personal side of them and their business side. I think that's overlooked a lot. And,
Yeah.
I'm very similar in the way that I work with my clients as well, as I want to understand what their dream is for their life. Because that is one of the things that happens is that people come and they have all these fantastic ideas for their business, and then you try and match it up with their life, and it's like, how are you going to do that if you wanted to live in this way, and
Exactly.
and vice versa. So it is so important to match the two, but until you have that conversation, people don't realize that, do they?
No, and I think this is where so often people end up in burnout because they
Mm,
try to do all the business things and still try and like build a life that fits whatever vision
yeah,
they've got
the
for
narrative.
it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and all these expectations pile on top as well, and they basically pile too much on their plates without really
Mm,
realizing it. And it is that drip feed effect. They don't really realize they're doing it until it's too late. But you
mm,
gradually add on one more drip, one more drip, one more
yeah.
drip, one more drip into like a glass of water, and eventually it will overflow. And that's really what happens, I think, when we don't have that clear vision, and we try and bring all our incredible ideas onto the table all at the same time,
Yeah.
rather than pacing it and remembering this is a marathon, not a sprint, and all those lovely analogies that we could
Mm.
put on the table.
Do you feel though as well that it is because we are pushed by society as well? Because society says a successful person looks like this, and we are so, used to looking around us and looking at what other people are doing and thinking, well, that's success. So then I need to do that as well. And then not really sort of bringing, as you say, the two things together in terms of, who you are compared to that other person.
I mean, there's definitely a when people ask you, are you being successful? I think they're always asking, are you making enough money? I don't think they're
Mm,
asking
yeah,
anything beyond financial
no.
success, which
Mm,
is just such a small part of the story. And yes,
it
we
is.
need money. We need money to pay our mortgages and to buy food and to wear clothes,
Mm,
and all that. But ultimately, financial success is such a small part of
yeah.
of what we focus on. And certainly what I focus on with my clients is, yes, we want to bring in more income, but actually it's the impact that they're creating, and
Yeah.
not just in their business, but in the world around them as well. all of my all of my clients are passion-led, heart-led, soul-led business owners. They're in it for the impact that they're creating. Yes, they want to make money from it because otherwise it's a hobby, right?
Yeah.
But to them, success isn't just about the numbers. But yeah, looking out into that bigger world, there is that vision of these people on yachts and with their fancy
Yeah.
cars and going on these incredible holidays. And yes, that might be success to them, but it's not success to everybody. And if we're all striving for that same version of success, that we're actually doing ourselves a real disservice, because that's probably, for a lot of us, not what we actually want. We're just striving for something that we think we want because other people have gone to that thing and they're showing off their wealth. And I put wealth in inverted commas for those of you who are listening on audio version, because wealth isn't just about financial wealth. It's about the richness of life, isn't it? It's
Yes.
about the
Yeah.
relationships you've got, the experiences you're having, whether you're actually loving the business that you're running. All of that stuff is what wealth really is about. And yes, finances are part of it, but they are only part of it.
Yeah. And yeah, this is so true. And also sort of looking at how your life is at the moment, because yes, money is really important, but sometimes we've created this life of the stuff that we have to maintain
Yeah.
and isn't what we really want. So the big
No.
cars, the big house, the big this and that. And the amount of times that I've heard people say, quite recently, that they've downsize things because they realized that the stuff wasn't the thing. That's
No.
not what they wanted. They wanted more of the experiences. And because of the stuff that they have to keep going, on this hamster wheel to pay for, then it's not allowing them to have the experiences that they really want, and live the life
Yeah.
that they really want. So
Absolutely.
it's such a
Yeah.
22 that we're just like, the realization of, do we really want this? It's not. It's just stuff.
Absolutely. Well, we moved to Devon in 2019 for exactly that reason, to simplify our lives a little bit.
Mm,
We were really, really drawn to live here anyway. There was a real, like, whenever we came here on holiday, sort of the breathing calmed
yeah,
down. You could feel the
yeah,
shoulders drop, the stress levels dissipated. And we were very much thinking, well, that's really what we want. We don't want to be, like you say, we had a lovely house back in Berkshire. Kids were at great schools, but it was a bit hamster wheel like. We were constantly having to keep the money coming in to fund for the nice house, and
yeah.
we had to pay for a gardener because we were working and because we got a house with a
Mm,
big garden. It became like this perpetuating problem of
yeah,
needing to earn more to pay
to
for
pay
more.
more.
And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and it seemed crazy. So when we moved down here, we moved into a much smaller property. And for a long time, we were fortunately mortgage free, which was just so, particularly during the lockdown,
Yeah.
was so well, we felt so relieved that we didn't have that huge financial commitment on our shoulders during lockdown, because not only am I self-employed, but so is my husband as well. So we
Mm,
had a tricky time of things during lockdown, shall we say.
yeah.
Come out the other side and everything's okay, but not having that mortgage burden
Yeah.
was, well, I don't know what we'd have done if we'd have had a mortgage to pay, in all honesty.
Yeah. What is it that you love about what you do? What do you love the most?
I love seeing women trust themselves more. So many of the women I work with, the reason they're stuck in that overwhelm and that indecision is because they're not trusting what their instincts are telling them. And they're looking out, as we were talking about earlier, looking out into that external world and seeing what everybody else is doing and thinking to themselves, well, I should be doing what that person over there is doing. Or, oh my goodness, that looks like a good idea. That's worked for them. And trying to do all these things rather than going sort of almost back into themselves
Mm,
and thinking, well, what is it that works for me? What do I want to do? How do I want to grow my business?
yeah.
What mechanics do I want to use to market my business? Because
Yeah.
So we've all been drawn in by social media, right? We've all been
Mm.
drawn in by the free marketing that you get on social media, which, it's not really free, is it? Because you're still having to invest time and energy into
Yeah,
it. And then you get the ads thrown at you and
yeah. And you're still
that,
struggling
that's a
with
whole
the
conversation.
algorithm and
Yeah.
whatever. So
But we've all got, certainly I and a lot of the people I know around me have all been drawn into social media when actually there's so many other ways that you can market yourself
mm,
beyond social media. And it's finding what those right things are for each individual person. And when I can see that they are starting to trust themselves and maybe not just trusting themselves, but also pushing the boundaries a little bit and going, oh, okay, I'm going to try this new thing. It feels a bit scary, but I'm going to go for it because it feels like it's going to take me in the right direction. And it might not work on the first time or even on the second time, but I'm going to give this a go because it feels right.
yeah,
And I think that's what this all comes back to is with the work I do is about what feels right. It's not what looks right, but what feels right for the person. And the more we can trust that and trust the yeses and the nos,
mm,
then we know that we're going to be heading in the right direction, even if what we thought was our goal
yeah,
then changes along route.
yeah,
Because I think that is also a natural part of owning a business is that you might start at point A and expect to get to point D, but you might end up go via F, G, and H on the way,
yeah,
or it's never going to be a straight line. And you might start in this lovely straight line and then realize partway down, oh, this doesn't feel good anymore. And we're okay to change that. That's why we're self-employed, right? To have those that ability to change our mind every so often when we know we need to, because our body is telling us. So yeah, it's the trust thing. Um, and also seeing them just taking action finally after spiraling for so long, sitting on amazing projects and amazing ideas that just aren't going anywhere,
yeah,
and finally actually bringing those things to life. That's what I love most.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked what you said about, the paths that you can go, it might not be a straight line, you may find it's a zigzag or whatever, but also
Yeah.
be open to the fact that if it is a zigzag, that there's more opportunities to be seen in
Yeah.
those spaces because sometimes we can never imagine where something is going to take us. All we're doing is imagining what we feel it's going to be like or
Yeah.
what we're going to come up against. But because of those zigzags, it's even much more richer than we thought, the
Absolutely.
experiences and the outcomes. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I'm a big believer in exploring opportunities when they come your way. And you might decide when you've explored that opportunity that it's not the one for you. But
yeah,
I just think if you don't even explore it, how are you ever going to know that
mm,
that could have been the most incredible thing that had landed on your doorstep?
yeah,
And yet you've just turned it away because it wasn't your trajectory that you were planning for. Um, and again, that comes back to trust. Explore the opportunity and trust then whether you are your body, because most of the time it's our body giving the answer before our brain does.
yeah,
But trusting when our body says yes or our body says no, and then leaving it at that and not like unpicking it,
yes,
taking off all the scabs and trying to work out what's going on underneath, but actually just trusting that, oh,
yeah,
this feels really exciting. I'm going to run with it. Or, oh no, that doesn't
yeah,
feel aligned for me, and accepting that that's a no and not going any further with it.
yeah, yeah. Um, Sue, I want to ask you about your childhood. So I want to take you
Okay.
back. Um, and I say this every time I do the podcast that I love this question because I feel like there's always a link with our childhood, life as we know it, and who we are. Because you talk a lot about, the personality and who you are as an individual, and it always brings us back to the place where we're now in that position of living our true lives. There's always some sort of invisible link that
Yep.
we can think back, oh, do you know what? I was like this as a child, or this is the experience that I had when I was younger. And then you can always match it back to where you are. So tell us, what was your childhood like?
Um, it was varied. I had a stay-at-home mum, a dad who worked really damn hard. And when I look back now as a grown adult, I think my dad was probably living in burnout, and he was certainly living in chronic stress. And his primary goal as a father was to provide for us better than he was provided for by his family. And to him, that meant financially. He'd forgotten about the emotional provisions, the being present, the, having fun with the family. And I'm not saying I didn't have any of that. There was some of that, but his primary goal was to bring in more money.
There wasn't a
Um,
thing then, though, was it? It wasn't a thing then for, adults or for
no,
fathers even to think about, that the other side of things. It was just providing, wasn't it? Just
absolutely,
about
yeah.
providing. Yeah.
And he'd had a really, really troubled upbringing, which I only learnt about after he passed away, and I'll just come to that in a second. But
Yeah.
um, he had a mother who basically was very, very cruel to him, and so he learnt to hide his emotions, to numb his emotions, to push everything down. And so, as an adult, he couldn't be the emotional being that perhaps my sister and I needed from him, and certainly my mum needed from him. So it's not his fault, and
No.
but that's how it was. Um, and coming back to his death, he died at 56 of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that it could have been avoided had he not been living with chronic stress
Yeah.
and probably in burnout for all that time, because what he was doing in order to make himself feel better was drinking more, smoking more, um, eating quite poorly. We had a very healthy diet at home. My mum always home cooked, but his diet when he was out of home and he traveled a lot was not good. So he was overweight. Yeah, overweight smoker, didn't really exercise very much, drank a lot of beer. And so at age 12, I actually told him, if you carry on the way you are, you'll die before you retire. So I knew even at age 12 that things
Yeah.
weren't right.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what happened at 56. He had a heart attack. He survived the first one and then came home from hospital having had stents inserted and then died the following day. So he is a really big driver behind what I do. So whilst I work predominantly with women, that part of my story is deeply, deeply embedded in me. So much so that when I qualified as an accountant, I left the profession 18 months after qualifying because I could see myself heading down that line of
Right.
work hard, work hard, work hard. And it was part of the culture of the company I worked in at the time. And I was not prepared to do that. My dad had died by that point, and I was like, I'm not following in those footsteps. I'm going to do things differently. And actually, he would have been living here where we are in Devon had he survived. They were going to retire down here. That obviously didn't happen. So I'm sort of filling his boots a little bit by living here, and I know that he's here. I mean, his ashes are scattered about 3 miles from where I live, and so are my mum's for that matter. But I know he's here. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it.
Yeah.
But he's a very, very, very big part of why I do what I do. And the other thing that sprang to mind as you were asking me that question about my childhood was I used to spend a lot of time out in the garden. We obviously didn't have mobile phones or anything back then, or tablets or anything else. I mean, it was literally like 4 channels on the TV. And even then, you were lucky if it was kids' TV at
Yeah.
various times of day. So I think most of us spent a lot of time outside. But I can remember making like lotions and potions from rose petals and lavender plants and all sorts of bits and pieces like that. And now part of the way I look after my own energy and my own sense of self is by being in nature. So I do think there's a like big, big connection there.
There is. Yeah, absolutely. What sort of jobs did you do then? So what was your sort of career? Um,
Oh, it's been an interesting pathway.
um,
So
it usually is, again,
yeah,
back to this thing where you said
um,
it's not a straight line.
no, mine's most definitely not a straight line, but it has all sort of patchworked
Yeah,
together,
yeah,
interestingly. So I did a physiology degree, which was with the intention of going into medical research, and I decided I didn't want to do a PhD after a 3-year really quite intense degree. So the PhD got ditched, and I came out of university thinking, don't know what to do now. I'll just get a job. I just found a job to pay some rent and worked in a call center for about 12 months. Um, Stewed my brain. I needed to do something to keep my brain alive. And so I literally fell into accountancy, which is quite ironic, really, because I can remember when we were doing the careers talks at school and having, all those
Yeah.
discussions with the careers advisor. And I remember my parents saying to me, "Oh, you should become an accountant. You're really good at maths." And I was just like, there's just no way I'm becoming an accountant, literally no way. And there I was becoming an accountant. And as I touched on a few minutes ago, I left that profession 18 months after qualifying, to become an accountancy and tax tutor, which I do still do now on a freelance basis. So I'm still in that world, but I get a lot more reward from it than I did just literally working in practice. Then at age 40, I qualified as a personal trainer. The following year, I became a certified nutritionist. So I still continued with my accountancy and tax teaching because
Yeah.
it's freelance, it's part-time, so I could sort of manage the two,
Yeah.
because the personal training and the nutrition sitting alongside that. And then when we moved down here, COVID hit, as I mentioned, about 3 months after we moved down here. And so I tried to take everything online. We'd moved house. So all obviously my personal training clients back up in Berkshire, I'd left behind. I was building a new business down here in Devon. And over the course of the various lockdowns and coming out of lockdown and a house move and various bits, I decided I didn't want to carry on in that particular area.
Mm.
But what I had realized is I really loved the mindset side of things. I'd realized that most of what I was actually doing was, yes, I was helping people with their physical fitness and their nutrition and their diet, and in some cases, weight loss. But what I really was helping them with was behavior change and habits. And a lot of that came from the mindset work as opposed to the physical actions of the things that they were
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And then that started to become a lot more part of what I did. And then just gradually I would say over the last 2 or 3 years, I've ended up just bringing in more and more and more of the business part of my
Yeah.
background
Yeah.
into what I do, and hence the business mentoring, but with a big emphasis on being a healthy business owner. So I
Yeah.
look at the business, but as I mentioned at the start, we look at the person behind the business,
Mm.
because ultimately your health, your well-being, your relationships, what's going on in your life directly impacts how well your business can perform.
Yeah.
And so if I ignore all of that, then I'm not really helping you. I can help you grow your business, but it won't necessarily be in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the healthy lifestyle
Yeah.
aspect has become alongside the business and
Yeah.
accountancy
Yeah.
brain, and as sort of like the jigsaw puzzle pieces have joined themselves
They
together.
have. They have. Yeah.
Yeah,
You are a great example of someone who has pulled together all aspects of your life to create what you offer now to your
yeah,
customers, and to your clients. Because this is what we were talking about earlier, is understanding that all of this experience that you've got shouldn't just be thrown to the side.
yeah,
It makes it more richer. What you offer now to your clients is so much more richer than if you were just going to come in cold without all of that experience and all of that personal, all of that personal amazingness that you bring to the table.
yeah.
It's what makes what you offer really special.
Thank you.
Nobody could offer it the way that you offer it, because you're bringing all of this stuff
Yeah,
to the table. And there's so much in the industry now. We hear about so many mentors and so many coaches out there, and it's a very, very competitive industry. But to bring your complete self to that, and the uniqueness that you bring, which is exactly what I talk about and what I do with my clients, is that uniqueness that you bring to what you offer. That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love hearing that when you sort of talked about that journey.
Thank you. Yeah, it's for a long time I kept the accountancy side of things like over to one
Yeah, we
side. It's
do,
like
don't we?
you can
We
sit on
really,
that table over there, and the
yeah.
coaching work sits on this table here, and we're not going to touch. And
Mm,
it's only really been in the last, well, literally the last few months when somebody said something to me, and I was like, oh no, I need to welcome the accountancy stuff
yeah,
alongside. We need to sit here at the same table together because actually, like you say, it's a completely unique blend. And my not just of skills, not sorry, not just of qualifications, but of experience as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, absolutely. Was there a time that you felt like you lost your way, Sue?
Oh, I have many moments when I feel like I've lost my
Yeah.
way. I mean, before we came on this call, I was saying to you, or before we hit record, rather, I was saying to you that I woke up this morning feeling a bit in a funk and oh, do I really want to record a podcast this afternoon? And I knew, as I was saying to you, I knew when we got on the call, it would be absolutely fine. There would not be a problem at all. But those moments of self-doubt are there, I would say, nearly every day.
Yeah.
And not, and it's not because I don't actually believe in myself and what I offer, but
Mhm.
there's always that little niggle of, oh, am I doing the thing I'm supposed to be here to do? Or is there something even bigger that I'm supposed to be doing? Um, and yet when I jump on a client call or I jump on a podcast call like this, I'm like, no, I'm absolutely in the right place. And it's
Mm.
almost like I need that, not the reassurance from the other person on the end of the call, but the reassurance from myself
Your
that
inner
what I'm
voice.
doing is
Yeah,
really adding value.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, when have I lost my way completely? I don't think I've ever really had a moment when I've like completely lost myself. The only, well, I've hit burnout twice, and closed my business down twice as a
Oh
result of
God.
burnout. So I guess I lost myself a little bit then and that's because I pushed myself too hard. I get very excited about the work I do. I'm very passionate about the work I do. And I think anybody who most business owners listening to this will recognize this, that
Yeah,
we want to keep going and keep doing because we love it and it doesn't feel like it's hard work.
no,
And then we hit a point where we're like, oh, the brick wall has literally slapped me in the face and I
mm,
don't love my business anymore. And it's almost like, the axe comes down and
yeah,
one day you're feeling fine about things and the next day you're like, shit, can't I literally can't do this today. And yeah, I did that twice. So, but each time within about 12 months, I was being drawn back to it
mm,
by, maybe stuff I was seeing on social media or people conversations I was having. And I was like, oh no, this is the work I need to be
what
doing.
you need to be doing.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but other than that, I can't think of a time when I like completely lost myself. It's just those little niggles,
And
regular
sometimes,
niggles.
yeah, sometimes they are, we call them little niggles, but they're not actually. They're big
No.
things, you know? And it's like when you were called back to do those things, I bet sometimes, you have to throw them away a bit and give yourself that space and that time. When they come back into your life, there's a tweak. You
Oh, sure.
probably
Yeah, yeah,
found
sure.
that there's a tweak,
Yeah,
because you're not doing it the same way that you were doing it before, because you've come to sort of new realizations and you're adding something else, some more spice to it, or you've understood more about, the path you were taking and you're now
yeah,
doing things a little bit differently. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Not just from an offers perspective, but also from the literal way that you run your business. That
Mm,
changes too, I
yeah,
think. And I'm really leaning into human design at the moment, so much so that I'm actually studying so that I can bring it into my client work. And the more I honor my own human design, the more I can see traction happening in my business.
right.
And my human design is quite contradictory at the very high level. I'm on the one hand, I'm a hermit, and on the other hand, I need to be in community. And
Yes,
it's finding
exactly.
that like natural balance between, well, how
Yeah,
much time do I want to spend in community? Because then I know I'm going to have to retreat and
yes.
go into my own way of being. And I've always known that I'm an introvert. I've known that for years,
Yeah,
but now I see it in the way I see it because I had sort of pushed the community bit aside. I think particularly after lockdown when we basically weren't allowed to be in
yeah,
community. I sort of isolated myself and it became quite a lonely place for a little while. But now that I am going into community, but then also honoring that retreating
Yeah,
aspect of my personality or my design, the way I'm literally built,
yeah,
the more I'm loving the community piece
mm.
because I'm doing the other half of it. I'm
Yeah.
not
You've
all
got
in
to.
community and exhausting myself.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a juggling act to get it
Mm.
right. And some weeks, there's too much community stuff, and some weeks there's too much
Yeah.
isolation-y stuff, like introversion stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
yeah, I can't remember where we
it's
were going with that, but
yeah.
brain's just done
Our
a
mind goes
perimenopause
really
moment on
quickly.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Our minds are really, but yeah, it is understanding. It's sort of like understanding that you have to fill yourself up. We give so much, we get so excited about what it is that we're doing, and we get into that community space, and then we think, right, okay, I've got to have this downtime to fill myself up before I can give
Yeah.
more. Because that's
Yeah,
what happens is we just keep going and we're just giving and giving and giving, and we aren't having that quiet time that we need.
yeah, and I think it's knowing what you need as the amount
Yeah,
of quiet time, because everybody needs a bit of that, and some people need more than others. I need quite a
yeah,
lot of it,
yeah,
and I know that now. And if I honor it, then it works well, and things come. My energy gets is relatively consistent. I'm in flow.
yeah,
I'm still loving what I'm doing. There's none of that like I'm not teetering on the edge of burnout anymore. For a long time, I would push myself a little bit too far and teeter on the edge. I could pull myself back from it now,
yeah,
but now I'm not even getting to that point of teetering because I'm like, oh, okay, I've done a
yeah.
load of community bits. I
Need
literally
it.
need to
Yeah,
step back. But somebody else might be able to do loads more community, loads more events, and keep going, and then at a later point have
yeah.
their moment of retreating.
And it's understanding not to beat ourselves up about it. Like you said,
Yeah.
if you need that longer time, do that longer time. Yesterday afternoon, I had like a whole morning. I was working with young people. In the morning yesterday, I was working with young people. I go into schools as well and run like mini workshops. And I also sort of like do stuff in university where I mentor young people who want to start their own business. So, when you're spending a lot of time, and especially with young people, it's a very like, I came home yesterday afternoon and I just took a nap.
Yeah, I would have probably had to do the same.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
thought, this is lovely. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't feel guilty that, oh, maybe I should be doing this or doing that. No, I need this rest. And I woke
Yeah,
up and, I was fine, full of energy to continue doing whatever I wanted to do. So, yeah, it's just understanding what our body and our mind needs.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, what was the other thing I was going to, the next thing I was going to ask you is, has have you ever come to a point where things have been scary in terms of, you mentioned that you can have that voice in your head that sort of gives you the negative talk, but we
Yeah.
can also have the negative talk around us. So, like our support system or people around us can be like, are you sure you can do that? Are you sure you're doing the right thing? Are you going down the right path? Um, so how has that been for you? Have you sort of like generally had support around you, positive support, or have you had to fight through that? How's that been?
So when my mum was still alive, there would she definitely would have questioned stuff. She was like, "Why are you giving up a good salaried job?" Oh, and I remember when I left the accountancy practice, my husband's grandma's husband, complicated. Anyway, this elderly gentleman who had been in the financial world for a long, long time, he was like, "Why are you leaving the accountancy profession? Why
Okay.
would you want to do
Yeah.
that?" Anyway, I completely ignored him because I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. But yeah, my mum used to question things, and they do it from a real sense
Yeah.
of love, don't they?
Yeah.
Because they
They
don't
do.
want you to fail, and they don't want you to end up in financial hardship.
Mhm.
And so they're doing it from a place of love, but they're also doing it from a place of completely misunderstanding as well. Because if they've never been in the world of self-employment, they don't really know what that's like.
Yeah.
I've got a few friends who have only ever been employed, and I don't think, well, I know that they don't really get what it's
They
like
don't get it.
to
They
work
don't
in the way
get
I work.
it.
And I remember telling one person, a couple of Christmases back that I was going to be launching a podcast, and I could see the face. It wasn't so much the words, it was the face of like, oh, why would you want to do that? Sort of face.
And
Um,
also the face
and
that goes, who do you think you are? Podcast.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah.
sort of thing. Um, and I think a few years ago I'd have probably gone, oh, maybe I shouldn't then. Maybe,
Mm,
but on this occasion I was like, no, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to worry about the
yeah,
negative Nancy's. They can think what they like. And I've got the flexibility of working on my terms
yeah.
in a place that I want to live, doing, and anyway, whereas they're in corporate working their 9 to 5s without, you know, any flexibility whatsoever. Um, I'm very fortunate with my husband. He is so supportive of everything I've ever done. And I had a bit of a moan yesterday about something, and he just sits and listens, really. He's very, very supportive. As I said earlier, he's also self-employed. So we have to and he goes away quite a lot with his work. And sometimes I want to go away and do things with my work. So we have to do balance our diaries quite well, because we have that one in the background there, the dog,
Yeah.
and a son still living at home. So, we can't completely just be free for all on our diaries. But no, I've I have had negative comments. I can't think of anybody specifically, but mainly it's people who just don't understand,
Yeah.
and therefore question. And my mum passed away 10 years ago now, so I don't have that family loving worry that
Mm,
often people experience. I don't think my sister fully understands what I do, and she has made a few snide comments at points in
mm.
time about things, but again, they sort of become a bit of they just brushed off now. I've been self-employed for 12 years, so I'm like, well, this is what I do, so you know,
Once you understand who you are and you know that your journey, it
yeah,
doesn't worry you when other people say stuff.
yeah,
It's not it. We've sort of developed that stronger or harder skin that it doesn't phase us anymore, because we know that what we need. We
yeah,
know what we need to not just survive but to thrive. You know,
yeah,
and so the people who don't understand our spaces are always going to come. They're always going to communicate with us from the space that they're in, because they
yeah,
don't understand the space that we're in, which is why it's always important to surround yourself with people that understand your space. And
yeah,
it's like, and I say this, I think that was one of the things that I was sharing with the students yesterday, because I think when you're young, and I feel like I didn't learn that until I was well into my adulthood, that friends are great, but also having a really good network of supportive people that are
yes.
in the same sort of industry or the same sort of things that you understand, they will have your back. They will just, they will take that angst away from you that you will have every single day, because you won't have all that negative, just the negative talk at you. You will have people who will understand your space.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
if you are a solo business owner, you need to find your communities,
yeah,
whether that's networking groups or other self-employed friends
yeah,
or memberships that you choose to join,
yeah,
because it can be a really lonely place otherwise. Because
absolutely.
a lot of the people that we mix with, like you say, our
Yeah,
friends, are often still in employed roles.
yeah,
And so you need to find I don't necessarily like this word, but I think it sort of encompasses everything. But you need to find your tribe. So it's not just
mm,
about finding any old group of people to hang out with who happen to be self-employed, but people who've got the same sort of values as you,
yes, yeah,
and the same sort of goals as you, so that you can push each other a little bit, but also
mm,
support each other and cheerlead each other as well, and hold each other accountable a little bit.
yeah,
But more than anything, just have those conversations where somebody else gets it.
yeah, yeah.
They're like, I know what it's like, and
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're talking a different language almost.
Yeah, and then when they're giving their advice or their thoughts on something, the place that they're coming from.
Yes,
They're not just coming from a
exactly.
place of not understanding.
Yeah.
position.
And they'll be objective as well, because our friends and our family members can be so subjective because they don't want to either lose the relationship or for you to fail.
Yeah.
Um, and so they'll often come at any advice from a very subjective angle, whereas somebody else who's self-employed, who you might have a great relationship with,
Yeah.
but they're still going to come at it from a much more objective angle and be able to give you like the really honest advice that you need, not
Yeah.
the nice to have advice. That's where having a client coach relationship is so helpful as well, isn't it? Because, you know, I've got friends who are self-employed and there's only so far I will go with the advice or guidance or I would give them. But when somebody's paying me, I will push a little bit further than is comfortable because that's what they're paying me to do.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who's asking for my advice from a more sort of voluntary perspective, there's only so far you can push someone.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're so right there. Um, I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
See, that feeling that you had earlier this morning, it's completely
Well,
gone.
and I knew it would disappear. I knew because as
I
soon as I start
know.
talking with someone about what I do, or if I'm on a
Yeah.
client call, my energy always comes straight back.
Yeah,
It's just,
because we're in the space that we love, the
yeah,
space that is ours, and the space that we're living our true lives, and that's coming back to that thing. So we're going to wrap things up with some quick fire questions. So I always ask all these questions just to end the podcast, and it just sort of gets us to focus a little bit on the key things that sort of wrap up our lives, really. So, do you understand what makes you truly happy?
most of the time. There are definitely moments, as I touched on earlier, where the self-doubt kicks in, but
Yeah,
I know I'm always happy in nature,
yeah,
in the woods, in the fields, on the beach. And I'm always happy when I'm with my family.
nice. Lovely. There's always sometimes a few things. Some people say one or two things, and I just think it's so important to understand what brings you happiness and what brings you joy, because then you can dip into those things when you do feel a bit low.
Yeah.
And when life is taking over and the craziness happens, and you can think, do you know what? I'm just going to go out in nature. Or
Yeah.
for me, I love the beach. I love the water. I love being able to be in that, and I love sunshine. So I don't even know why I'm living in the UK, but I know I need to have my sunshine fix. But yeah, there's just certain things, and I like to call it a happiness fountain, because it's like all the things that you know that makes you happy, and then you can dip yourself into it when you need to. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, how are you with getting still to feel emotion? I feel like I know the answer to this because you talk a lot about feelings, but do you?
Well, interestingly, I'm quite good at getting still,
Yeah,
but I'm not that great at, well, I can feel my emotions. I'm not very good at expressing my emotions. And that goes back to childhood. So this emotionally numbed father of mine
mm,
effectively taught us to not share our emotions because he was uncomfortable when we shared our emotions. And so he would get angry. And so we learned not to share our emotions because that
yeah,
was easier in our household. I'm getting better. I keep practicing and sharing how I'm feeling. And it's something I am really honoring to do as a growth practice for myself.
yeah.
But yeah, I sit still every morning with
Mm,
my cup of cacao.
good.
But there's still work to do on bringing the emotions out. A lot of them are very deeply buried.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's a
Yeah.
journey, doing it. I love watching your dog in the back.
Hoping she's going to stay quiet for the last couple of
Oh, God,
minutes.
we're nearly there. We're nearly there. I know mine is being quiet as well, which is very surprising. um, have you found, and you mentioned you don't really like this word, but I use it in this question. Have you found your tribe?
Yes, I have. I've got lots of, since moving to Devon in particular, I've got lots of people down here who are very in touch with their spiritual side, which is
Mm,
something that I think I abandoned as I grew into adulthood, particularly having had children. I think we, became a serious mum.
Yeah,
Well, not serious mum, but I had to be serious because there
yeah,
was a child to look after. The spiritual side of me got very much sort of parked in the corner.
yeah,
And since moving down here and finding various practitioners in the area that I
mm,
now go to, that's very much coming through more and more and more in what I do and how I honor myself. And there are so many people down here that I can have those sorts of conversations
yeah,
with. So yeah, I definitely found my tribe. Yeah.
love it. And finally, do you love yourself unconditionally?
No,
Yeah.
I'm going to be really
Well,
honest.
that was quick. Okay,
No, I don't.
let's unpack it.
No. There are still a few conditions attached. I still am trying to prove myself to myself. I still look in the mirror and sometimes don't like what I see. Um, Bit of, body image
Yeah,
crap that I carry with me. Um, and yeah, I need to feel fulfilled to feel like I'm in a good place. So, um, that doesn't always come from working hard, but working hard is part of that. And that again is something I'm having to try and work through to ditch that story
yeah,
of working hard. So in fact, so much so that my husband made a comment yesterday about working hard. And I was like, no, that's not what's happening. I'm putting a lot of hours in. It doesn't feel like I'm working hard. It's a different narrative.
yeah,
Um, and I'm very, very mindful of the words that we use. That's something I've really started to notice in probably the last 5 or 6 years, is being very careful of how we speak about ourselves and how we share things with others, because our brain doesn't know the difference between what we're joking about and what we're
okay.
serious about.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And so I'm very, very mindful of yeah, of words.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's interesting that you said because my about not loving yourself unconditionally, because my way of looking at it is to realize that we are a work in progress,
Mm.
and to love ourselves unconditionally means that we love the fact that we're on a journey, and we love ourselves in respect of how we think, how we feel, that we can, um, you know, feel when something doesn't feel quite right, so we can deal with situations when they arrive, when we are not as perfect as we feel that we should be, but we accept the fact that we are a work in progress and that we're on
Yeah.
a journey.
And
Um, so yeah,
yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, I'm very, very much closer to loving myself unconditionally now than I would have said I was 10 years ago, let's say, very much closer. But I just don't, there's still a little bit of something. I'm
yeah,
not quite sure how I can pinpoint
yeah,
it, but there's a little bit of something that still makes me say no. There's still some
mhm,
sort of condition attached.
yeah,
It might be really small, but there's still something.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, very much a work in progress.
yeah,
And I think it always will be right the way through until my
yeah,
dying day. And I think
yeah,
it's the same for all of us. If
yeah,
we're on that journey of trying to better ourselves, not to be the best version of ourselves, but just to better ourselves each and every day, then we'll never stop that journey. We'll always be growing in little tiny ways right the way through.
yeah. I feel that's true. Yeah, we
Mm.
absolutely will always be growing, and I think that's important that we should always be
Mm.
growing as well. So, Sue, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on my podcast.
Likewise, I've loved it.
I've loved it too. I just love these conversations. It just feels like two friends chatting about life and experiences. So it's been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you online? Where's the easiest and quickest place for them?
So my favorite social media platform is Instagram, and that is suerichards.coaching. I am on LinkedIn as well. So that's Sue Richards Coaching without the dot. So yeah,
Okay,
they're my two
brilliant.
hangouts mainly.
find you there. I will share your links with the podcast, but I just wanted people who are listening to actually hear where they can find you now.
Amazing.
But as I said, thank you so much. And thank you so much to my listeners. If you have been listening today, there has been so much that you can take away from this podcast. So I hope you've been inspired. I will be back with another True You podcast next week. But in the meantime, keep being the true you. Bye, everyone.